speaking again from Audible Elegance. I'm Lou Hamilton, the owner, and Audible Elegance is located in Cincinnati, Ohio, just a few doors north of the Montgomery Inn. And please do subscribe to our channel. Take the time to go over to our webpage and enjoy my blogs that I write, different subjects, and look at our Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and have some fun. I'm going to talk about something I was asked to help somebody with the other day, which was to bring younger people into this hobby of owning audio gear. And there's clearly well understood failure to sell this type of quality gear to 20 and 30-year-olds. It tracks that way in a number of different ways. And the person is looking to speak at Expona next year about this subject, and it became fairly clear to me early on that he really did not understand, I don't know what you want to call it, mission or goals, as well as the problems underlying his approach. And I did a demonstration for someone the other day where we were streaming music, and we streamed it on a very good system here, certainly not expensive, and we don't sell the world's most expensive gear here. And then I took him over with the headset that I typically use for traveling. It also serves as my cell phone. And I connected up to the internet and played the YouTube video of it. And after he listened to the song, I just turned to him and I said, now, why should someone who can get that level of quality and enjoyment, now it's personal, it's not in a room, so to speak, why should you be asking them to spend some of the ridiculous sums of money I see for equipment today? You know, where does this go? And they were completely baffled by that question, because while a reasonable system can sound very lovely in a room, when we're talking about personal consumption, there was no justification for spending, a lot of money. And that's how I look at some of these pieces of equipment where, their introductory products are 5 digits and some go to 6. It's sheer lunacy. And so trying to, introduce younger people to music doesn't start out with telling them that, well, they really can't listen to music unless they drop $20, $30, $40, $50,000. It's just complete nonsense. And the other aspect that a lot of people didn't watch unfold is what happened to the music industry itself. It all began with the advent of compact disc, because rather than recording companies spending good money for talent agents and searching the country for really good talent, all they had to do is go to the vault and reissue a lot of music that people already owned. And the musicians, the Beatles might get 25 cents per album, but now instead of charging $6.95 for the record, they were able to haul off and get $15 and $17 a pop. So the music industry itself got very pompous, is the only way of describing it, with who they were and what they were, and what their mission should have been. That got forgotten because now the accountants had a field day with all the money that they were generating by reselling, what they had already created once before. So I did take to enjoyment in the Men in Black when Kay pulls out that little tiny desk and makes the crack. Well, I guess I'll have to buy the White Album all over again. And there was some real truth to that. So what happened is the music industry really didn't support new and great talent because they didn't need to. They were making money hand over fist by reissues. And that really set in motion the degradation of music in certain ways. And there were, interviews with people like, Dick Clark, who grew up through a lot of the era. And, when he was asked what could the 80s be remembered for example, and he said nothing. You had a little bit of bright spot in someone like Madonna and a couple other artists, but really nothing. The music wasn't developing as a genre. And music has to develop as a genre, not as a single artist, it becoming very popular for a year or two and then disappearing. So, without the support of really good talent, music sort of drifted itself. And I'm not saying that artists in the 2000s or 10s or 20s are untalented, but the style of music itself kind of fractured in every sort of which direction. And the only thing that kind of came along was essentially the rock and rolling of country music. Because if you listen to the country music out of the 90s and 2000s, it was rock and roll. It wasn't country music anymore. So you had people, laying dancing and all this sort of stuff, and they were having fun, fine. But and it went its direction, and now you got a singular artist out there, Taylor Swift, who's demanding huge sums of money for tickets and stuff. But it's a single person doesn't create a genre of music per se, so you have this enormous price increases on being able to listen to music in your home, while the selection of music itself drifted sideways, in my personal opinion. It really didn't develop. And the overemphasis of the use of electronics to create effects within the music itself really distracted, took away from talent if it was there. So, when you ask the question, how do we get young people interested in music? Well, it's a twofold question. You really have to, have more music that is truly worth listening to. And I listen to all sorts of stuff all the time. Eras don't matter to me. But the equipment has to be reasonable enough that they can enjoy it, as opposed to having to sacrifice everything else they may want or want to do just to obtain something to listen to music that, it really isn't going anywhere. Now, some of this is generational. When you had music in the 40s and the 30s and 40s, most of the personal experiences for people were miserable. And so the music had a tendency to be happy, to make them happy in difficult times. Certainly the war music was, that era, the music was trying to be uplifting, and some of it was remembering the boys and the women who committed themselves to that effort. The 50s was, look how good we have life, but there were some restrictions to it. And the 60s came along, and you had a little bit of that, but you also had an awakening of an entire generation that this is not how we want things to keep going. We want a different path. And so there were messages within the music itself that communicated to people emotions and feelings. And now this was all before you had the internet, before you had cell phones, and so many ways to communicate now that I mean, let's be honest, and nobody could have imagined even the concept of a flash mob. But now that the level of communication and messaging and sending the sort of feelings has branched out in many, many ways, and music no longer holds the high ground as the only way of making this happen. And in certain ways, it's gotten out of control in terms of messaging. I mean, now it's you can't go by without a day of a report about how Bud sales are awful, and that's an example of the speed of communication of feelings. I'm not even going to get into the content. It's just talking about the ability to message. And so part of what music has lost is the ability to dominate communicating feelings and emotions. The 80s, 90s music was kind of all over the place. I mean, Michael Jackson had his run, and a lot of fun stuff. And you got into the 2000s and the 10s, and music continued to fracture because it really, oddly enough, had lost its voice. And so, the truth of the matter is that, a lot of this ridiculously priced gear, was either manufactured not for American consumption, but for the Far East, where money was very sufficient. And to play music that's going back, years, not new, but old stuff. And that's fine. It's fine to listen to the old stuff, but, when you start asking 20s and 30-year-olds, I'm 69, you start asking 20 to 30-year-olds to listen to something like the Eagles or the Beatles and stuff, get serious, folks. That would be like my parents in the 60s telling me that, the only good music to listen to is, Benny Goodman and the 40s and 30s music. And the messages that they were sending at that time, there was no way I could relate to it. And so, a good shop should be looking out for, bringing people into music is its primary goal, and in an affordable way. Not this, Taj Mahal sort of stuff. I mean, that's, the people who are buying that equipment, are also dying. So the music that they love is dying with it. So if you're talking about, encouraging a younger generation to start enjoying music within their home, which is what these systems are all about, you have to make that available to them in a logical way, and you have to have something that's worthy, meaningful in terms of content for them to listen to. And that's really the challenge. And dealers like ourselves can work on the affordability and the equipment side. We can't resolve the music. That's not in our control. We can only work with what's being produced. And so, that's kind of the circle of it. And I just, you can't take somebody who can get really wonderful and enjoyable performance on a set of headphones. I use these little Motorola ones all the time. They were originally designed for people to listen to music while they were skiing or snowboarding, and stream it from my laptop computer. I've demonstrated that many times. And so, unless you give them a reason to listen to it, which is the message in the music, but a logical and affordable means to do that, there's a complete disconnect. So I'm just kind of laying this gauntlet out there for my own industry that both the music side as well as the equipment people that, quit building crap with, like putting gold steering wheel on Hyundai automobiles. You've really got to get your act together and start making equipment that people can really enjoy, that, isn't going to set them back 3 years of their salary. And the music industry's got to step up and really go out there and spend the money to find new talent and support it. And one last thing. People really need to start jumping on these clowns who are doing these reissues on vinyl with very poor, or tapes or copies of something, because, people who are starting to get interested in spinning records, they're spending $30 for something that, frankly, the 8-track that is passe sounds better. I mean, it's to me that is probably the ultimate obscene move by people capitalizing, in production of pure crap. And so if someone wants to start out there and have a site that starts listing, who makes these terrible reissues by manufacturer, the actual album number, post it, please, because it really annoys the hell out of me, because I've done a video where I stepped into the crap too. And so that does nothing to help, have new people come into the industry, because they're hard pressed to find the original older material, only to turn around and get something that, I'm sorry, I mean, if they wanted to listen to something that bad, they could just go to Walmart, So let's get serious here on what's actually even being pressed and made for people. So I'm sorry, but this is a topic that's very, very sensitive to me, because I'm watching what's happening, and it's not right. It's simply not